Well, tonight, on Friday night, I'm taking Claire to go watch a high school football game so I can watch some real football in this town. Jish! Happy Friday. Welcome in.
Can I interject early? I just had said to Mark, I said, I've seen enough games, but this is one of those games we all agree sucked, but we're all going to argue with each other as to why it sucked. Yeah. We'll be at each other's throat about, the line didn't do. I thought the line looked good, but I know people will argue with me on that.
Yes.
Mahomes
Drop passes.
is sometimes behind and off, and he doesn't always get blames, but boy, they couldn't overcome some of that last night, right? And the drops, 8 drops.
8 drops. Unbelievable. Certainly not the way you want to start the season when you're the defending Super Bowl champs. Mark, needless to say, your parlay, Mark the Shark, did not have a good start to the season betting-wise.
No, that was terrible.
Did you hit any of them?
I need to go back through it. I just knew that I wasn't getting it, so I stopped paying attention to it. But, yeah, Sky Moore, once again, he's on my no-bet list now. 0 catches for 0 yards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I told you yesterday.
You nailed that
I didn't feel good about Sky Moore going into that game. Oh, my goodness.
And then Andy Reid on 3rd and 1. Got to do an end around every time.
End around, cute BS. Oh, my goodness.
They just need to go back to Mahomes doing the QB sneak, in my opinion.
Pound the rock. I
mean, the preseason and last night, that play was snuffed out by formation. It wasn't like, they got it.
Mm-hmm.
No, the guys immediately were screaming and adjusted right to it.
And wasn't even close. They lost yardage
on
that end around at the end of the game when they were trying to get a first down there and keep that drive alive. So, not the way to start the season that you want to have if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. I will say I had the opportunity to be there last night, and I'll tell you what stood out to me. The amount of Busch Light that I saw around the stadium was unbelievable. I have not seen that amount of Busch Light at any stadium in my life. And I couldn't help but think it was a way to hedge bets against Bud Light. I mean, how many people were probably walking around saying, I'm not going to drink the Bud Light. I'm not going to. Okay, all right, we'll get a Busch Light. Now, it's the same company. So depending on how you view the boycott, do you still want to help Anheuser-Busch InBev, or do you say, I'm just going to boycott the Bud Light to send a message? I don't know. But I could not believe how many of these guys walking around with beer last night, they had Bud Light in there, but there was an enormous amount of Busch Light. And I don't ever remember seeing that much Busch Light being carried around by these beer vendors at games at Arrowhead Stadium. And I can't imagine that's just a coincidence. I can't imagine that Clark was like, I'm in a Busch Light mood tonight, boys. Take out the Busch Light. By the way, Busch Light, you can mock all the light beer you want, but Busch Light is bottom of the barrel garbage. Oh, my gosh. I mean, give me a Coors Light 10 out of 10 times over the Busch Light. Sorry, Iowa. I don't know why you guys like that stuff, but it is just horrific. So I was surprised by that. And then I walked up to a vendor, and I just needed a water. And I didn't see any Bud Light. I saw a bunch of Busch Light in this little container. And I said, you got any Bud Light in there? Have you been selling it? And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get more. Don't worry. I'm like, no. It's fine. I'm not drinking any Bud Light. I was just curious what the Bud Light sales has been like for you thus far tonight. And he goes, not too good. Got to go. And then he kind of scooted out of there. I was like, okay, all right. Such is life. That's fine. Enjoy it. I mean, the highlight was probably Natalie Grant and the national anthem. Now, did they play that on TV? Did NBC do that?
Uh-huh.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good.
It wasn't as popular at my house, apparently.
Okay.
I was asked to relay that. My wife said, you can go ahead and say that if you want.
Well, I got a little video clip of it. We'll play it later in the show. But I thought she did a pretty good job. I mean, it wasn't Generald Wilson, our boy over in St. Louis, who's an absolute stud, but she was pretty good. And the one thing I'll say, too, about national anthems, you're better off having pace to it than dragging it out. I mean, these 2.5-minute national anthems are the worst. And, I mean, Natalie Grant might have set a record for the anthem last night. That thing might have been $1:25. I mean, she had that thing moving along. I think she was trying to beat the fighter jet flying overhead.
That's what I noticed, too. I felt like she was going really fast with it.
Yes, she certainly had some pacing to it. But you know what? Better that than Lady Gaga taking 4 minutes to sing the national anthem or something like that. So I'll take Natalie Grant's anthem 10 out of 10 times. That was the highlight, and then it was all downhill from there. And then, how about Chris Jones sitting there in a blue hat? I mean, did his agents, do you think that was planned, the blue hat? I mean, here this guy is sitting out for the Chiefs last night because he wants more money, and he's sitting there sandwiched by his 2 cheeseball agents who look like they're out of some crappy, TV series from the 90s that got canceled after one season. And he's wearing a blue hat. He's not wearing any red. He just happens to. Did he just pull a blue hat out of the closet last night and then forget who the team was playing?
That was another observation from the missus.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have a Chiefs jersey on.
What do you think that was all about? I mean, did they say anything? Did anyone speculate?
Where was he? I saw him. I thought he was in a suite, but I wondered whose suite.
Yeah, he was in a suite. I don't know where.
I thought, well, if he's in Clark's suite, then that might indicate a deal.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. The 2 agents kind of looked like sourpusses all night, as far as I could tell, just seeing some of the screenshots on
like
social
that when
media.
you try to do the black on black, but you're working with Sam's Club. So. It's like the blacks don't quite work. One's a Navy.
Yeah. Mark, what was social media saying about Chris Jones last night and that blue hat he had on?
I didn't see too much about the blue hat, but they were just mad that he was there with the agents.
Cheese balls?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So they were talking about that. All right. That makes sense. And then what about Kelsey? What were they saying about Kelsey on TV last night?
I mean, he was, after any catch like by Noah Gray or Blake Bell, they would go right to him and he'd start swinging the towel around. He was riling the crowd up, riling his teammates up. So he was good teammate, basically.
Eventually, he had the towel over his head at the end of the game.
Oh, did he?
In frustration.
Well, maybe he was trying to hide that embarrassment of a mustache, too. That thing is, sheesh. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. But anyway, yeah, there was one great moment in the second half. There weren't many of them, but there was one great moment in the second half when, for the first time and only time, as far as I could tell all game, they panned to Kelsey on the big screen, and the whole stadium starts chanting, Kelsey, Kelsey.
Oh, right. And they showed him on TV trying to wave it down like they were getting ready to call play.
Oh, did
they? He was trying to be modest or whatever.
I think somebody was hurt.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, was that it?
Is that what it was? All right. Well, needed something to cheer for. I mean, geez, that wasn't much to cheer for last night.
Get off the field if you want people to be quiet.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Come on now. Don't look at me. Look at me. One of those things. Oh, boy. Well, it is only game one. The old cliche, it's a marathon, not a sprint, but certainly not the way you want to start the season if you're Kansas City. And, here's how it works in the NFL, too, if you're kind of a casual football fan. The best teams get the hardest schedules the following year. That's how the NFL creates such parity in the sport. They want the, good teams to kind of come back down to earth. They want the bad teams to get a little bit better. So the Chiefs have toughest schedule in the NFL. You got to go to Jacksonville next week. Of course, a playoff team that you beat last year, but a team that should be a little bit better than last year. So you start off 0-1, not where you want to be if you're Kansas City.
Foreseeing the future, that is a blueprint of the way the game with the Chargers will be this year, I believe.
I could see that as well.
I think the Lions are every bit as good as the Chargers.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And that's a good Lions team. Dan Campbell took some chances last night, did some dumb things last night, but you know what? He walks out of Arrowhead with a win. You got to give him that. Coming up on KCMO, somebody who I don't think is walking out of 2024 with a win is Joe Biden. Heck, I'm not even sure if he's going to make it there. Joe Biden is facing serious concerns from within his own party about his age as he gets set for next year. We'll tell you what that looks like coming up on KCMO Talk Radio. Well, licking some wounds from that Chiefs loss last night to open up the 2023 NFL season. All eyes were on Arrowhead right here in Kansas City and certainly did not go as planned. Now, somebody who's also probably licking their wounds after yesterday is Joe Biden.
Come on, man.
Because this CNN poll comes out, and it is just disastrous for him. I mean, this poll that shows him losing to several GOP candidates, done, once again, registered voters by CNN, is not good news for an incumbent president who should theoretically have a leg up. He's got the entire media establishment behind him, and none of it's good at all. His job approval rating stands at just 39% in this poll done yesterday by CNN. 58% say his policies have made economic conditions in the U.S. worse. That's up 8 points since last fall. I mean, if Republicans screw this up, then they deserve to lose. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in 14, 15 months from now. I can't predict the future. If I could, I wouldn't be doing this. But I'll tell you right now, I mean, if things go the way we think they're going, we're kind of in this economic malaise, uncertainty around the economy. Maybe unemployment's still low, but inflation remains stubbornly high. I know it's come down, but it's still stubbornly high. People don't feel good about the prices of just basic goods and services when they go out. Then, if Joe Biden can win re-election, if he is the nominee, if he can win re-election in this environment, then that's going to say a lot more about what the Republicans have to offer than it is Joe Biden. And who they bring to the table than it is Joe Biden. 58% of Americans have an unfavorable impression of the president. 58%, 6 in 10. Fewer than half, 45%, say that Biden cares about people like them. Only 33% of Americans in the CNN poll describe him as someone they're proud to have as president. 33%. And a smaller share of the public than ever now say that Joe Biden inspires confidence. 28% of Americans say Joe Biden inspires confidence.
What are we talking about?
That's down 7 points from March. And how about this? What percentage of Americans think that Joe Biden has the stamina and the sharpness to serve effectively as president? What would you guess that number's at? I mean, it should be like 2. It should be like Jill and Hunter who think he's up to the task, but it's amazingly 26%. But in our hyper-partisan environment, 26% is pretty damn bad, right? Because if you figure 50-50 country, that means half of Democrats don't think this guy has the mental stamina and sharpness to effectively serve as president. And by the way, 26%, that's down 6 points from March. Those declines are largely driven by Democrats and independents. 73% say they're concerned Biden's age might negatively affect his current level of physical and mental competence, and 76% say his age could impact his ability to serve out another full term if reelected. Like, these are colossally awful numbers. But here's the thing. There's no alternative. Sorry, RFK Jr., there's no alternative. 67% of Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters now say it's very or extremely likely that Biden will again be the party's nominee. But 67% also said the party should nominate somebody else. That's up from 54% back in March. Where do you go? I mean, you're not going to go to cackling Kamala. That would be a disaster waiting to happen. Trump would beat her by 10 points, for crying out loud, right? So you're not going to do that. I mean, do you go for Gavin Newsom with that nice jawline, that great slicked back hair, those nice teeth? Maybe that might be your best bet, but the guy's overseen a state in California that for the first time in its history is losing people because of how poorly it's been run. So does that make sense right now? I mean, that's the problem. They don't have a bench. Republicans actually have a bench, but instead they're probably going to go back to the well with Donald Trump, it looks like. But the Democrats have no bench. In fact, 2020 was supposed to be that breakout moment for so many folks who were patiently waiting on the bench, and they all were complete duds. Remember, that's how Joe, ultimately became the nominee. There were a lot of duds out there, like Robert Francis O'Rourke. He was at the top of the list, a.k.a. Beto. What's up, bro? Like, people like him. They were supposed to be the next generation, and they were nothing but dunces. I mean, Julian Castro, people like that just had no political future and no pulse of what was going on. So they dragged Joe across the finish line, and now they're in this conundrum. Do they turn the page? They thought maybe Kamala Harris could be that person. I mean, she would be a disaster as a nominee, never mind as a president, and I think they know that deep down. Gavin Newsom has political talent. Like, I mean, for all the people that want to knock him, Trust me, there's plenty to knock in terms of what he's done in that state, but he's got political talent that you can't take away from him. He sounds slick. He sounds smooth. He's got the looks. He's got all that down pat. But do you want to hand him the reins right now? And by the way, would Kamala allow the Democratic establishment to hand Gavin Newsom the reins? Because if she wanted to create chaos, if the party power brokers knew that, hey, it's time to move on from Joe, this ain't working. And she's like, okay, great. What do you want me to do? And they're like, no, it's not you. Sorry. We're going to hand select Gavin. I mean, she could throw a complete wrench into those plans, and you could end up with a primary on that side of the aisle, and that's the last thing that they would want. They want to coast through, and they want to be able to beat Donald Trump, and because that's all they, know how to do. That's what they think they can do effectively. On the text line, Pete, I'd love to see a debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Oh, my goodness. Could you imagine?
She's a real beauty.
I mean, that would be, oh, gosh. That would be fun. It'd be a complete disaster, but it'd be a lot of fun to watch. Text line is 913-408-7710. Dude, you've been calling for a recession for a year. It hasn't happened. I'm not predicting it's going to happen. But if you're denying that we are in this economic malaise, then I have beachfront property in Salina to sell you with your name on it. Okay, we are not in a full-blown recession. And I've said a million times, I hope we never get to being in a full-blown recession. That would be bad for millions of Americans, myself included. But we are in this weird place where the economy is not healthy. Scream low unemployment all you want. Inflation is stubbornly high. People are concerned about the prices. Interest rates are incredibly high. I mean, there's a lot of negative things right now about this economy that cannot be understated. Coming up on KCMO, the most overlooked news piece from Kansas City yesterday. Because of the Chiefs, this got completely overlooked, and I think it might have been planned that way. We'll get to it next. I don't think the timing's a coincidence. Welcome in. Happy Friday morning. Trying to get over that Chiefs loss last night. Sheesh. Yeah, Tony costing them the game. Someone just saying that on the text line. He was certainly one of the problems. I'll give you that. My wife's family's all Giants fans. I said, take him back. Jeez, please, get rid of the guy. But an overlooked news piece from yesterday. Quentin Lucas dropped this at about 6:15 in the morning yesterday, and we had him on the show, as we do each and every Thursday morning, and we talked about this. And I don't think the timing was a coincidence because there's some backstory drama here. But what you've got is the mayor essentially saying that we are no longer going to partner with Jackson County on their jail. We're not going to be partners in that. There was a thought that it would help the taxpayer, save the taxpayer some money. But Quentin Lucas sent a letter to Frank White, Jackson County executive, essentially saying, we are no longer interested in shared facilities. So that's not good. I mean, it would have made sense to obviously have a shared facility there. Jackson County uses it. Kansas City, Missouri can use it as well. Jackson County's building this big new jail facility, so it would have made some sense to do that for all parties involved. But the mayor's backing out. And frankly, I can't blame him. Now, here's the thing, though. He's got to get his own jail then, and he's got to do it ASAP. He can't drag his feet and do this whole, well, now we've got to make a decision over the next couple of years. If you don't want to go into business with Jackson County, I don't blame you. Who would right now? But you better have your own plan here. So yesterday, the mayor comes on this show an hour after this news breaks. And, I asked him, okay, so what are you going to do about it? What is your plan here? And here's part of our conversation.
I think that would be one look at it. We have been quoted a range of prices ranging from $250 to $300 million. Others have said it'll be $50 million. Like everything, and I talk to my friends in public safety and beyond all the time, it's often a money issue, and unfortunately it shouldn't be. It should be a safety issue. And the people who concern me the most, and I know your callers have talked about this, aren't necessarily your recidivist thieves and all those sorts of things, although they are trouble. But it is a lot of these people right now who are in crisis on the streets. that are in episodes sometimes are kind of spaced out in a different world. Those people need to be off the streets. They need to get help. And that's the sort of thing we want to make sure that this facility is doing so that ourselves, our families, and them can be safe.
Is there any money left over from all the COVID spending that could be used on this?
So Jackson County continues to have funding. You'll have to bring them on to kind of talk about what their plan is. I believe they still do have ARPA funds, perhaps even some CARES Act funds, to the tunes of millions of dollars that I think could be helpful on that. For those of us in Kansas City, I think we were in some ways more efficient in how we were spending our money, and so we don't have that. That being said, we've received money through an opioid settlement. We've received funding in a number of other areas. Our goal is to see no tax increase to the taxpayers of Kansas City in connection with construction of this facility. I will also note that we continue to work with other partners, including Platte County, that I know has detention needs, to make sure that we're fixing broadly the entire public safety conversation. The status quo of what's happening on our streets right now is unacceptable, including to those of us in government, and so we'll work to do more here.
All right. That was Mayor Lucas yesterday during our conversation, just hours after he put out a letter essentially saying that we are not interested in partnering with Jackson County on their new jail that they're building. Now, Kansas City hasn't had its own jail in the better part of 5 years, and while I don't think that's the reason, I don't think there's no one thing when you can say, here's why Kansas City has seen this massive spike in homicides. You can't just point to one thing. I can't sit here and say it's, oh, well, if only we had a jail. No, it's a lot of things. It's not having a jail. It's having a crappy prosecutor. It's being down 300 cops. It's local politicians' rhetoric. It's all those things wrapped into one, but certainly this hasn't helped at all in the situation.
Oh, I was just going to add the constant influx of superintendents in the school district and different things like that. Again, all different levels.
Yeah, I mean, there's a million things you can look at with this. So you sit here and you say, okay, Mayor Lucas saying they're not going to join Jackson County on the jail. Well, now what? Well, now he's got till January to figure out how much the city can spend and should spend on its own detention plan. And then on top of that, he's got to get to a vote of the people. So you're probably looking at next April when something like this could go to the vote of the people of Kansas City. And then maybe you got a couple of years to get a jail up. Can you do that by 2026? He mentioned that last night or yesterday morning. He said 2026 was the goal because he mentioned that's the World Cup year. I don't know if he's planning on throwing a lot of foreigners in prison when they come here to Kansas City and, I don't know, drink too much or something. But for some reason, he brought up the World Cup as a goal of when they have a potential new jail up here in town. I'm just glad we're not going totally crazy woke on like, who needs a jail anyway? You just slap them on the wrist and pat them on the tush and send them on their way and say, don't do that again, kid. I mean, you got to have a jail. It's comical, and it's dangerous what's going on here on that front. 913-408-7710. And that was the most missed news story yesterday amongst all the Chiefs hype. And part of me wonders that the mayor did want to bury that story because what it does is it creates another narrative that is very obvious, by the way, to anybody paying attention, that there is a clear disconnect and the relationship has continued to break down between Jackson County and Kansas City, Missouri. No doubt about that. Chuck's in KC. What's up, Chuck? Good morning, man.
Good morning. I think it's amazing when Lucas and Sly James, the city had a jail for years, and they had built a new facility out there on Ozark Road in 1970. My father worked for at Leeds Farm. In fact, was assistant superintendent when he had retired. That facility, they moved all the inmates out, made a contract with Jackson County to house them in a facility that was already overcrowded and under investigation for. And then as soon as it was empty, they went out and razed that property, tore the building down because they didn't want to spend less than $5 million to do repairs that were necessary to that building to keep it up and running. A building that was not overstaffed or that was not overpopulated with prisoners. In fact, they were leasing space out to, I believe, Jackson County at the time, but they tore that down because they didn't have $5 million to spend to build it. And now they want the taxpayers of Kansas City to bear the burden of building a new facility out there. They had hundreds of acres of land out there on Ozark Road with a facility that was less than 50 years old that was more than suitable, that neighborhood around there grew up around that jail.
Yeah. Well, Chuck, let's fast forward it to when they shut down the jail, right at City Hall, right downtown 5 years ago.
Yes.
I mean, that was Darryl Forte in large part where he shut that down because it wasn't up to standards. And I get it, but now you got nothing 5 years later.
Exactly. And they didn't want to spend a few $1 million, but the city turns around and tells us that they've got money to spend for every other thing that comes down the road.
That's a good point.
Whether it's reparations or whatever.
Yes.
And how do they expect the city now to come up, or the taxpayers, they expect us to dig deeper into our pockets when it was their mismanagement and their lack of leadership that resulted in the problem we've got right now.
Real quick, it's a yes-no question, Chuck. If they put it on the ballot to, let's say they got to raise a sales tax, an eighth of a cent sales tax to build a new jail in April, would you vote yes or no?
No, I would vote no.
Okay, that's interesting.
They had a good facility. Facility, and they decided we didn't need it. Okay. And you look at the problems we're at now. They're pardoning everybody, letting folks go, won't prosecute. And
so you would say, thank you. Yeah, no, I got you, Chuck. So you would basically say no, but not because you don't want a jail, but because, you'd say find the money somewhere else. You guys have screwed the pooch for far too long. See, that's going to be tough because then people vote no in the jail. Part of this is not going to get better at all.
And confusion, too, because then it's the county facility being built. So some people are saying, well, aren't we in there in jail in Kansas City?
Yeah.
Yes. But it is the county facility.
It is the county facility.
So not city.
Yeah, and the city doesn't want to partner with the county on it. 913-408-7710. We will get to you at 6:44 on a Friday, post-Chiefs loss morning, unfortunately. But we'll get to you. Kendall Gammon, top of the hour. We do have to share some other news with you here coming up as well on KCMO Talk Radio. Well, we got a little more on this story. Welcome in on a Friday morning on KCMO. We told you about this viral police officer in Virginia who was caught on camera by a random TikTok user getting into the backseat of his police vehicle with a random woman in a parking lot. Didn't look good. Not the sharpest knife in the drawer, I would say, this guy. But, of course, a lot of people used it as a way to start trashing police officers. Prince County, Virginia is where this took place. And not a good look. It's a white cop. He's strolling around the parking lot. He starts kissing and smooching a lady who happens to be black. And then they hop in the back seat. And let's just put it this way. They weren't taking selfies back there. All right? That's not what's going on in the back seat of that car. Well, the people involved have spoken about what was going on. First off, let's put to rest the idea that this was an exchange over, let's say, a lady doing something illegal, and then in exchange for looking the other way, something happened in the backseat of that police car. That's not what was going on here. This was a meetup between two individuals who knew each other. Prince George County police officer Francesco Marlette was meeting up with Virginia Pinto. And Pinto spoke to the media and said that this was not a one-night stand. In fact, the two had been dating for about 2 years. And if you haven't seen the video, put it up on social media the other day if you want to go find it. But it's just, people used it as a way to trash cops. And what this really is trashing a guy who allegedly is a scumbag. And the reason I say that is because he's married. So he's been on this on-again, off-again relationship for about 2 years with this woman, Virginia Pinto. And they meet up in a parking lot in broad daylight. Wow, real geniuses, these two. And people start taking videos and photos of the two of them kissing in a parking lot and then hopping into the back seat of the car. So The wife has spoken out. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. The wife of the cop has spoken out. Her name's Paula. And she went on Facebook on a rant, and she said it was an embarrassing and painful matter while telling Pinto, the woman involved, to rot in hell, B-word. She goes, yes, this is a very tough time for me and my kids. As embarrassing and painful as this is, we need the support and the love and most of all the respect from the community and our families. Yes, I know it's been going on. No, I'm not updating anyone on the situation after today. Paula Marlette went on to say her husband has been cheating on her for years. I love you all. Except for you, Virginia. You can rot in hell, B-word. She puts that on her Facebook post.
There we go.
Got to respect that at least. She claimed to the New York Post that this woman, Virginia Pinto, is easy and was used by her husband. She told the New York Post in a written comment, seems like Virginia has a mouthful to give about me when her husband left her dirty A because she can't stop cheating and inserting herself into other people's business. How common is that? I mean, we have a lot of law enforcement that listen to this show. I'm just curious. Like, you can just text in. I don't expect you to call in. Hey, it's Bob with the Olathe Police Department. What's up there, Bob? How are you? No, I'm not expecting that. But I would be curious to know from those in law enforcement how common this is. Where you develop some, and I don't know, how or when this might happen, but you develop a relationship and you're meeting people on the job. By the way, in broad daylight. I mean, this guy, by the way, this cop had been suspended back in 2016, Officer Marlette. So, like, they know that this guy's a sketchy character. He stayed on the police force, though, obviously. And 7 years later, here he is meeting his girlfriend, his fling, in a parking lot in broad daylight. I don't know, thinking it's 1982 and people don't have cameras on their phones that they whip out when they want to see a cop who starts smooshing in the parking lot with a random lady. Like, what did you think was going to happen? And by the way, there were kids right there as well, according to people who were in the area. So that's where it's like, you got 750,000 cops on the streets in cities across America. That's about 750,000 is the number. And it just takes one imbecile. One. That's all it takes. To ruin it for everybody. To give cops a bad name. To be like, I told you these guys, they're just out there waking up every day wanting to, shoot people and pick up chicks or something like that. It's like, no, that's not how this works. That's not what 99.999% of them are doing. But you get these bad apples. People whip out their cell phones. And, you got a whole news story out of it now. And that's just a darn shame. And I hope there's some punishment for this guy. I mean, I know that unions in public sectors are going to defend this guy. I don't know how you do it. But this guy, he should be on leave for quite some time. You can't be having this kind of behavior. I'm sure the union will defend him in some way, shape, or form, but I would not be defending this guy. And that's the kind of stuff you can't be having people doing the job. Never mind when you go viral for it on video. You got to be kidding me. Jeez. Oh, brother. 728, welcome in. Trying to forget what happened last night out at Arrowhead. Still got the smell of the parking lot. And by the way, not the Bud Light. There was not a lot of Bud Light flowing last night. Saw a lot of Busch Light, same company. But it seemed like Busch Light was the beer of choice last night, as far as I could tell at the stadium. But trying to get that stench from that game out of the way from last night. Coming up, speaking of stench, what is the president doing on 9/11? Can't believe it. We'll get to that next. The guy's doing what on September 11th? Goodness gracious. You got to be kidding me. Joe Biden on Monday, September 11th, is not going to be doing what presidents have been doing for the better part of 21 years. No, he's not going to be, in New York or Virginia or Pennsylvania at events to commemorate those who lost their lives 22 years ago on Monday in the horrific September 11th attacks. Not going to be doing it. Instead, he's going to be in Alaska is where he's going to. Yeah, that's right. Yep. He's going to be in Alaska. Are you kidding me? What's next? He's going to, honor the Oklahoma City bombing by spending time in Seattle? I mean, what the heck's that? What is that all about? So yesterday, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about this, was asked about the president's plans. Now, remember, this guy doesn't really do a lot. Like, he's not doing as much traveling as other presidents have done. And, whatever. Some may say that's showing his age. Some may say, I guess, in today's world, post-COVID, you can do a lot of things over Zoom, Maybe he's talking to President Xi over there in China via Zoom call. Hey, Joe, you got to turn your mic on, Joe. Turn your mic on. One of those things. But anyway, here's what Karine Jean-Pierre had to say yesterday about the president's plans to commemorate the 22nd anniversary of the September 11th attacks, which are coming up on Monday.
The president is going to mark the anniversary of September 11th attacks this year in Alaska, as you just mentioned, with service members and their families. And as he does every year, as he's done every year, he plans to honor the lives lost and the families and loved ones who still feel the pain of the terrible day. This is something he feels is very important to do. We can only imagine the heartbreak and the pain that the 9/11 families have felt every day for the past 22 years. So I know the families have certainly been on his mind in recent days, and they will continue to be on his mind as we approach the anniversary. As you know, is coming up on Monday. Certainly, if we have more to share, we will do that.
Will you meet with anyone who's been personally impacted by 9/11 in Alaska?
I'm sorry?
Will you be meeting with anyone who was personally impacted?
I see your question. We'll have more to share, but we'll definitely be meeting with the service members and their families, which he believes is incredibly important. We'll certainly have more to share as we get closer to Monday.
I mean, the question was very simple, right, of Karine Jean-Pierre. Will he be, if he's going to be in Alaska on Monday for the 22nd anniversary of September 11th, is he going to be with somebody who, or with people in the military who have some connection to the attacks of 9/11? And she basically said no. I mean, she's like, we've got more information coming on that. Like, this is the kind of stuff where it's a layup, right? This is such a layup. September 11th. Now, I know we're getting into that weird place where the September 11th anniversary might only get attention every 5 years. I mean, I hate to say that. That's not going to be the case on this show. We're trying to get some guests. We're not going to go wall to wall or anything like that, but we're trying to get some guests on Monday who can obviously talk about the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. But that being said, we're kind of in the place where it's going to probably get more attention, let's say on the 25th anniversary, coming up in 3 years, in 2026. We're kind of in that like every 5 year phase now, and that's terrible. I hate that for the country, but that's probably where we're at. That being said, it's such a layup if you're the president of the United States to drop everything you're doing on 9/11 and be in Virginia, Pennsylvania, or New York City. Especially when you're Joe Biden and you don't like going all that far, right? Like, you prefer to be in that Northeast corridor. You don't want to do a lot of traveling. Now, he's scheduled to be in India. He's there right now for a summit with other world leaders. Then he's making a quick pit stop in Vietnam. And then he's going to be in Alaska on Monday to commemorate the 9/11 attacks. I just don't understand. I mean, why it's imperative to do the pit stop in Vietnam, which then may delay your ability to get back to the East Coast in time to commemorate 9/11. I mean, that's the easy stuff, right? Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. That's the easy thing to do. Make sure that on September 11th, you are back on the East Coast and you are able to commemorate the most horrific terrorist attack on U.S. soil. You don't need to be a brain surgeon or some type of genius overpaid political advisor to say, hey, on 9/11, there's 3 places, one of 3 places you should be, and that's it. It's not difficult. And that's where, part of me wants to blame Joe, but then the other part of me says, hey, where are the people in charge in the White House? Like, I'm looking at these polls, CNN poll that came out yesterday that shows he's underwater when it comes to likability. He's underwater when it comes to job approval. He's underwater when it comes to people thinking he's being up for the job. All you have to do on September 11th, you don't even have to talk. You just got to show up somewhere in your aviators and look good and look somber and do what every other American president has done since then. And for some reason, he can't do it. And I'm not knocking him for the sake of knocking him here. I'm genuinely trying to understand how this White House cannot schedule their guy, the president, to be where he needs to be and where he should be on September 11th, on the 22nd anniversary. I don't know. I can't understand it. The text line is 913-408-7710. Pete, he'll be with service members in Alaska. That's perfect. Support the troops. What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? I mean, I know some of you might be trying to find excuses for the guy. And I'm not sitting here just looking to rag on him for the sake of ragging on him, but I'm saying this is the easy stuff. This is the simple stuff that any other president would be smart enough to do. And by the way, if I'm Joe and they hand me my schedule and they say, sir, you will be in Alaska on Monday, September 11th, I'll be where? I'll be 3,500 miles, 4,000 miles from where I should be? No, redo the schedule. That's what I'd be doing. Now, I know you might not be able to connect what Monday's date means. It might be a little late by the time he realizes what September 11th is all about. But you got to be kidding me. Also on the text line, Pete, I can't wait for Joe to share his quote, "When I was in Vietnam" stories coming up this weekend. He probably will have some good ones on that front. That's very well done. But, geez, I mean, you sit here and you say, where are the missteps? Well, this is an obvious one. It's like, leave the politics aside. Can you get the president of the United States in Pennsylvania, New York, or D.C. for September 11th? That doesn't seem like a big ask, but apparently it is, sad to say. Unbelievable. Whew, boy, oh boy. Top of the hour, Kansas U.S. Senator Roger Marshall is going to be joining us here on KCMO Talk Radio. Looking forward to having him on the show. Licking the wounds coming out of the Chiefs game last night. I'm sure Doc Marshall will have a few thoughts for us, so we look forward to having him on 710 a.m. and 103.7 FM as we roll through a Friday morning, licking the wounds from that brutal game last night. Yeesh. Unbelievable. 21-20 loss to the Lions. Didn't see that one coming. I didn't think it was going to be a blowout, but didn't see that loss coming. Tough when you can't catch the ball. Bridget's in St. Joe. Hello, Bridget. Good morning. What's up?
Good morning. Happy Friday to you.
Same to you, Bridget.
I don't think they want Joe speaking on 9/11. Honestly, I think they're trying to avoid any kind of public speaking.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing. You might be right about that, but he could just show up and lay a wreath somewhere. Like, that's all it would take. That's all he'd have to do.
I think people would expect him to make some kind of a statement or say something about the events on 9/11, and I don't think he's up for it.
Yeah.
I think they're protecting him, and I don't believe that Jill has COVID. I believe that things are heating up on the Biden family, and she looks stressed out to the max.
Well, I think she's, I think that I don't know. I mean, there's not much. Bridget, have a great weekend.
You too.
There's not much that I would take these people at their word on. That I will, but I don't know. I mean, I will tell you this, though. I don't know if you saw the video, and I don't have it on hand, but 2 days ago, Joe's getting tested for COVID because Jill has it, and he doesn't have it, but now the White House is telling him to wear a mask. And it was the most likable moment of Joe Biden's tenure as president. He goes up to the podium 2 days ago, and he's like, yeah, they're telling me to wear this mask or something like that. And like you could tell he's like ticked off about having to wear the mask. It's like, thank you, Joe. Yes, revolt. Revolt, Joe. Lead us in the revolt. I was like, that's likable Joe right there. He's kind of dangling the mask on his hand. He's like, yeah, they're telling me to wear this even though I keep testing negative. It's like, welcome to the world of regular Americans for the last 3.5 years. Jeez. On the text line, Pete, don't you know January 6th is the worst terrorist attack in U.S. history? He will undoubtedly be at the Capitol that day. That's a good point. Yeah, he wouldn't miss that anniversary. But 9/11, come on now. Got to protect the Saudis, too, 746, 913-408-7710. We'll get to you, and then we got Roger Marshall, top of the hour. Well, since a caller just mentioned Jill Biden having COVID, I saw this story early this morning, and now seems like a good time to bring it up before we get to Doc Marshall, top of the hour. What the heck happened to Howard Stern? What a loser this guy has become. My goodness. He has become everything that he would have ragged on in his heyday. That's what Howard Stern has become. So I'm reading this here. New York Post had the story. Howard Stern recently admitted his paranoia over a new strain of COVID-19 has gotten him into a fight with his wife. He said in his SiriusXM radio show that the shock jock, they write here, conceded, and Howard Stern is a shock jock still, but now he's a shock jock because how big of a wimp he is. He's paranoid and neurotic, especially when it comes to COVID, and noted that his wife is less so. Well, all right, so, Howard's lost his balls, and now his wife's got him. Good for her.
She keeps him in a little jewel box. I like that they put a qualified in there, especially about COVID. No, he's just paranoid and whatever.
About everything.
Yeah.
As he explained, this has led to tension and arguments with her as media outlets have been warning about a new coronavirus strain, and his wife wants to go out and socialize. Yeah, she wants to live a life like a normal person, and Howard Stern literally has become everything that old Howard would have made fun of. The elite who is sitting in his basement afraid of COVID, no longer following the science. That's what he is.
But he's so aware and self-effacing about it.
Oh, please.
Exactly, said no one.
Yeah, exactly.
What a butthole.
Stern admitted the fear of getting sick has been weighing on him in his relationship. He said, "I'm going crazy with this. My wife yelled at me last night. We got into a fight." He added, "You know how paranoid I am about getting COVID. I haven't gotten it, and I'm pretty safe, and I really don't want to get it," he said. The radio host vented about people telling him to lighten up about the disease, stating he would be the one to have a strong case of it because he's older and lucky like that. Okay, I mean, he is 69 years old. He's not a spring chicken. But at this point, as the virus continues to mutate, it does weaken to a degree. And in the end, if Howard Stern does get it, he's probably going to be okay. I mean, that's just, once again, in life, you got to play the odds to some extent. It's kind of what you have to do, right? Are you going to get in the car and go to work? Or are you going to be like, I might get into a car accident today, so I better not go to the office? No, it's called living your life. His wife, Beth, is 51 years old. He says here, Beth has a bunch of plans. She has a wedding shower to go to and a lunch with a friend and a dinner. So we're really making an effort. We go out to the restaurants. We went to the Ed Sheeran concert. We've been out there. I haven't gotten COVID. And I'm like, you know what? If I get it, I get it. Stern said, then all of a sudden they announced there's a new strain and it's on the rise. And, people are being hospitalized. It's time to go back to lockdown. I'm like, I'm just emerging. Now I'm going back to lockdown. Oh, gosh. Imagine being married to this guy. Oh, my goodness gracious. No.
How many is it, by the way?
Yeah.
Wearing through them, I think.
I think so as well. He said here, he concluded his comments, Howard Stern, by saying, I'm just expressing my fear and I'm scared. Well, you know what? Maybe you can go hang out on an MSNBC set or something like that. Have a good time with them over there. But, geez, imagine, Howard Stern is right up there with the all-time greats in radio entertainment. And now here he is in the twilight of his career, hiding in his basement from the 72nd mutation of COVID-19, 3.5 years after the fact. What a fall from grace. And a guy who, if you could have, around the clock 30 years and told Howard this is what he would become, he would have hated himself. And I bet you deep down he does to an extent. How could you not? I mean, it's a total embarrassment. And I want to say I feel bad, but I really don't. Because you're doing it to yourself here, my man. Jeez. It's like you're trying to find a reason to be paranoid and neurotic and not go out. I mean, just tell your wife you don't like going out. You don't like socializing. Stop using COVID as an excuse, right? I mean, that's what you must do, John. I'm sure you do that on a regular basis. I don't want to go out. Sorry.
Oh, I can kick back now. I'm like, oh, my blood pressure is going up here.
I feel like you get more excuses the older you get, you know?
Mow the lawn.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm feeling a little sluggish.
On the text line, Pete Howard, just get the booster. Yeah, I mean, well, right? I mean, do you love the boosters or not? Just get the booster. You're going to be okay. That's what you got to believe. Oh, my goodness gracious. Pete makes me want to sneak into his studio and leave a note saying I rubbed COVID-19 all over his microphone.
How dare you?
Oh, gosh. It's really sad. Really sad what he's turned into. Oh. That being said, what's also really sad is knowing that Patrick Mahomes hit Kadarius Toney right in the hands, and somehow it ended up going the other way for a pick six. I mean, have you seen the screenshot? Mm-hmm. It hit Toney right in the hands.
Saw it all night.
Perfect in stride. And the Lions score a touchdown and a pick six. Ugh.
I have flashbacks. I'm like, that'll be laps after practice.
Yeah, well, it should be. It better be. I'll tell you what, right now. My wife's got a bunch of family who are Giants fans. I'm like, take back Toney. Take him back. I know he did some good stuff at the end of last year, but take him back. That was brutal.
Well, I'll pile on the Richie James, too, right now. I'm like, take them both back.
Yeah, seriously. Sheesh. Oh, you mean like having cops around is a good thing for society at large?
Talk about a bombshell.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I can't believe it. Welcome in on a Friday morning. I wish I could say happy Friday, but when you watch the football game we all watched yesterday at Arrowhead, yeesh, not a lot of happy coming out of that. But this is, I'm not happy about this story that I'm going to share with you here, but there's something about it that makes me say, have you woken up yet to individuals like this next person? This person I'm going to talk about, her name is Shivanthi Sathanandan. She is a Minnesota Democrat who once famously vowed to dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department. She is now calling for tougher crime laws after she was beaten and bloodied in a carjacking outside her home this week. She wrote on her social media pages, quote, I have a broken leg, deep laceration on my head, bruising, cuts all over my body, and I have rage, she wrote. She said the beating occurred in front of her 4-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son at about 7:45 p.m. on Tuesday night. She says here, and she posts this picture of herself, and she's got blood all over her face. I mean, it's horrific. She goes, these men knew what they were doing. I have no doubt they've done this before, yet they are still on our streets. She writes, killing mothers, giving babies psychological trauma that a lifetime of therapy cannot ease, with no hesitation and remorse. Included in the post was a selfie showing blood pouring down the right side of her face. She goes, I'm now part of statistics, she writes on her Facebook page. I wasn't silent when I fought these men to save my life and my babies, and I won't be silent now. She says, we need to get illegal guns off our streets, catch these young people who are running wild, creating chaos across our city, and hold them in custody and prosecute them. She says, look at my face. Remember me when you're thinking about supporting letting juveniles and young people out of custody to roam our streets instead of holding them accountable for their actions. Her car that was stolen was later recovered, but no suspects have been arrested. And she thanks the incredible Minneapolis Police Department for assisting in the terrifying experience. Now, here's the problem with what Shivanthi Sathanandan posted, a Minnesota Democrat who once famously promoted defunding the police. Well, she once wrote on her social media pages, this is June of 2020. She writes on her social media page, Minneapolis Police Department has systematically failed the black community. They have failed all of us. It's time to build a new infrastructure that works for all communities. If you're still disagreeing with that basic fact, I'm not sure what to say to you, she writes, almost 3.5 years ago now. In another post, June 2nd of that year, she applauded the Minneapolis School Board's decision to terminate its contract with the Minneapolis Police Department, saying they have no place in our children's schools. I don't want anybody to get carjacked. I don't want anybody to get beat up. Never mind in front of your children, a 7 and a 4-year-old, for crying out loud. But for those of us who, in June of 2020, who are saying the unpopular thing of, policing is important, having law and order is important for all of us, those of us who stood firm on that, who didn't give an inch on that, who admitted, what happened to George Floyd was bad and certainly looks bad on camera, but that doesn't mean you dismantle police departments. That doesn't mean that you radically change the system. That doesn't mean that you fire police officers and bring in, social justice experts to roam the streets. You still need cops. You need deterrence for criminals. Those of us who said that, who never once wavered on that very basic idea that we all believed 5 years ago. I don't want to say we're getting the last laugh, but when you've got people who are advocating for defund the police now saying, gosh, we got to get criminals behind bars, it's like, yes, I know we do. And we needed to do that 3 years ago when you were screaming about dismantling police departments, for crying out loud. I mean,
I'm getting pissed now.
I am. Because this poor lady was advocating for all the insanity that so many got caught up emotionally in 3 summers ago. And I sat here with a level head, and I said 2 things can be true at the same time. Investigate the George Floyd thing, although we do know that he was incredibly high on drugs, and that played a role in what happened to him. But still, investigate it. The cop now is in prison, but you cannot dismantle law enforcement because of one incident. You can't do it. I don't care what kind of crazy, weird utopia you want to live in, where you've got, unicorns pooping Skittles over the rainbow. But in the real world, you need law and order. You need cops to do their jobs. You need prosecutors to do their jobs. You need bad people getting reprimanded for doing bad things. Because if not, you end up with repeat criminals on the streets who have no respect for law enforcement and are going to carjack you in front of your 7-year-old and your 4-year-old. And now she's living exactly, sad to say, what she was advocating for.
Don't care about the criminal's childhood. We'll deal with that later. Right now, your present actions suggest you need to be incarcerated.
Exactly. I mean, and unfortunately, too many in this town have bought into this nonsense, led by our awful prosecutor in Jackson County, Gene Peters Baker.
It's always interesting when reality smacks these people in the face and suddenly their truth becomes a little more focused.
Yeah, that is exactly right. Suddenly it's like, oh, boy, wow, wait, I'm living this? And by the way, the whole defund the police movement that was in large part pushed and supported by people who were never going to suffer the consequences, right, of actually defunding the police.
There you go. Yeah.
The people who were in the poorest neighborhoods, oftentimes minority neighborhoods, who are going to suffer the largest by not having an active and aggressive's the wrong word, but an active police department and a proactive, how about that, proactive police department. The ones who were going to suffer the most were not the ones out in the streets screaming, defund the police. It was, a lot of people who were in the political establishment on one side of the aisle who then went home oftentimes to, their upper middle class or upper class lifestyles.
I was going to say they're like East Coast academicians. Is that the right word?
Academics.
Academics with bodyguards, their own bodyguards.
Yes.
But, of course, our St. Louis friend is not the brightest bulb in the pack over there, so I can't really call her an academician.
Yeah. Academic. Don't worry, John. You're tired after
Thank
the
you
game.
for helping me.
Yeah, no problem. No, you're right. Corey Bush is an idiot in St. Louis, which is what you're trying to say in a roundabout way.
A lot of professors theorize in their world that, this is wholly unacceptable.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Until you get your car jacked.
Yeah, exactly.
Your Kia is boosted.
Yep, exactly right. And that's unfortunately what happened to this lady up in Minneapolis. And, there's people in Kansas City as well who bought into that hook, line, and sinker. And, now Kansas City is trending towards potentially a record year for homicides. down 300 cops, a prosecutor nobody has any respect for, and all they want to do is scream about guns and gun ordinances or whatever that oftentimes are already violations of federal law. But don't worry, keep passing gun ordinances on the local level. Please, keep doing that and see how it works out for you. It's not going to end well. None of this is going to end well. But they're going to keep pointing at Jeff City here in Kansas City and St. Louis, and local media will carry their water, and nobody will be held responsible for it, sad to say. And in the meantime, we're sitting here in a town that's down 300 cops. It's unbelievable. 913-408-7710 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM and 103.7 FM. Buy, sell, hold is coming up next. Meantime, Diamonds Direct is coming to the rescue, just like cops. Listen up, it's big. Now for a limited time, 0% interest for 5 years on anything and everything. That's right, 0.0% financing, 5 whole years. It's insane. What does that mean? $6,000 ring, you pay $100 a month. That is the smartest way to buy. It's amazing, and it's starting on Monday through October 1st. Get Diamonds Direct's incredible value and spread your payments over 5 years with a 0.0% interest rate. Where else are you going to get that in Jerome Powell's economy? Got to hurry, though. It starts on Monday through October 1st. 0% financing for 5 whole years. Details, showroom hours, and more at DiamondsDirect.com, located at 119th and Row.